The allegations that Frances Haugen made were many, but they had one unifying theme, that Facebook chooses profit over people. How do you respond to that?
That is not true, and I can tell you I've been at this company for 9 years. My background's in child safety and law enforcement. I was a criminal prosecutor for a decade before I came here. I wouldn't be at this company as long as I have been if this company didn't prioritize safety. We do. We've invested billions of dollars. We have more than 40,000 people who are working in safety and security across the company. And unlike the former employee, she, by her own admission, didn't work on these issues. She didn't work on youth safety. She didn't work on the subjects of the documents that she stole. I do work on them. And so I'm very proud of the work we've done, and this company does prioritize safety.
So the question then becomes, what other trade-offs are you willing to make to choose, to choose safety over growth and over profit? For example, would you be willing to give up engagement-based ranking?
Well, Emily, let me explain quickly how the ranking works, because again, there have been a lot of mischaracterizations out there. First of all, when people say the algorithm or the ranking algorithm, what that is a way of ranking the order that you see content like the friends and family you've chosen to follow or the pages or groups you've chosen to follow. You can always turn that off, and some people do, but most people don't. Most people use it because what we try to do is rank the content that people are going to want to engage with, that's going to make for a positive experience. And
why not make, Monica, why not make turning it off the default, right? So if you turn it off, it's more chronological. People use these apps mostly with the default settings. Why not make the chronological ranking system the default for Facebook and your other platforms?
Well, most people prefer the ranking system. I mean, I can tell you why I personally do. When the ranking system helps me connect with the information that's going to be most relevant to me, that I'm most likely to engage with, rather than, say, an old high school friend, nothing against my old high school friends, but an old high school friend who's maybe sharing a whole lot of photos from attending a music concert. So the algorithm, people can opt out, but I want to be clear that we do downrank, meaning we reduce the distribution of engagement bait, clickbait, sensationalist content, content that's close to our policy lines. And that's all information that we published in our Transparency Center, because we know people want to understand how the ranking works. And we recently, and it was just a few weeks ago, we published our content distribution guidelines that explain how that works.
Now, you clearly disagree with much of what Frances Haugen said on the stand today, but you said if you can agree on one thing, it's time to begin to create a standard set of rules for the internet. What does Facebook propose those rules should be?
First, that's absolutely right. And we've been calling for regulation for the past 2.5 years and working with policymakers and regulators around the world to help craft thoughtful regulation. I think it has to begin with transparency. It's hard to set the rules or the best practices or the standards that the industry has to meet until policymakers can actually see how companies are performing. So transparency requirements have to come first, and we've started to lead the way on that by putting out our community standards enforcement reports, which we began in 2017 and now do quarterly. Then the next, after that, policymakers and regulators have to figure out a way of ensuring accountability. What are the standards that companies need to hit in this industry? How do they report on that? And how is that reporting, how do we make sure that that reporting is accurate? Those are serious issues. It'll take a serious conversation with regulators and policymakers, but we are there, we are engaging in it, and we think that ultimately regulation that holds the entire industry to high standards can be a very good thing for us and for the public.
Now, I think parents in particular are really disturbed by some of the revelations she made about children. And I can tell you as a parent and as a mother, this comment in particular from Frances Haugen today, I found terrifying. Take a listen.
I'm very scared about the upcoming generation because when you and I interact in person and I say something mean to you and I see you wince or I see you cry, that makes me less likely to do it the next time. Right, that's a feedback cycle. Online kids don't get those cues, and they learn to be incredibly cruel to each other, and they normalize it. And I'm scared of what will their lives look like.
Monica, would Facebook consider raising the age that teenagers can join to 15 years old? or 18 years old? And if not, why not?
We do talk to safety advocates and make sure that we're doing everything we can to be responsible, both about the age when people can join, but also what that experience looks like. But look, I want to say I'm a mother as well. I also prosecuted child safety offenses for a number of years, but I raised two girls, and I was a teenage girl at one point myself, and I know that these issues of social comparison and anxiety, these are very real things in the offline world as well as the online world. We can talk about how social media can make things worse. And look, that's why we do this research. We want to understand it so that we can build tools to mitigate that. But we also need to remember what the research says about how social media makes things better. And in fact, if you look at the stolen documents that have been mischaracterized, this is not peer-reviewed research. We do put out a lot of peer-reviewed research. This Instagram youth survey is not that. It is a survey of a small number, around 40 Instagram teens who are struggling with wellness issues, who already were struggling with wellness issues. But what you see, if you look at that survey, which we've published, is that on all 12 issues, anxiety, sleeplessness, body issues, self-harm, for both boys and girls, a majority of those teens said that Instagram either makes things better for them or that it doesn't have a material effect. And we really have to keep that in mind when we think about the negative experiences. Now, even one negative experience is too many. And that's why we do this research, so we can understand it and we can launch tools and features to make the experience better. And, I can list a number of those. Hiding likes on an Instagram post so that you don't have to worry if you're a young person, so that you don't have to worry about being judged and if you're popular by your post, or giving teens features, as we do, to prevent people from following them who could bully them or harass them. So it's not just our policies, it's also the tools we give young people to make sure they have a good experience.
But Monica, the concern is that your own research shows there is a significant number of, let's say, teen girls, for example, for whom they say Instagram makes things worse. And so I wonder how you're thinking about combating that. For example, the Instagram for Kids product, you say you've paused it. What are the chances you're considering actually ending that permanently?
Emily, we've paused that because we want to continue to engage with the real experts in the safety space. And that's something we do on a regular basis. Those experts have, by the way, some of them we've hired into our company. But we continue to work with those safety partners because they help us craft the thoughtful approach that we have. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to get better. But again, people have bad experiences offline and online, and we want to understand that and we want to get better. But if you look at the Instagram survey that is being mischaracterized, by this former employee, what this research says, what the survey says, is that the majority of teens either find that Instagram makes these issues better for them or it doesn't have an effect. If you look at, for instance, anxiety, more teens say that Instagram makes things better for them than that it makes things worse. We published those survey results, so that's something that people can go take a look at and see for themselves.
What about the mistakes? Frances Haugen talked about this idea of moral bankruptcy and called on Facebook to admit the mistakes it's made, to admit, to take responsibility on some of these matters. I mean, are there any issues here that Facebook would be willing to take more responsibility for?
Well, look, I'm the first person to say that we're not perfect in our enforcement of our policies, and there's always more we can learn and more that we can do. I think we've shown how serious we are about that in the level of investment that we've made, billions of dollars, tens of thousands of people, all these partnerships with hundreds of researchers and safety partners around the world to try to get better. But I also think that this is a company that has been a leader on safety issues. When I first joined the company, we were already helping to lead the industry on child safety. In more recent years, that has grown to include the approach to terrorist organizations, the approach to influence operations. We've been a leader in this space and in the transparency about these safety efforts for years.
Mark Zuckerberg has been vocal on some of the Facebook scandals and controversies in the past. We really haven't heard much from him since the Wall Street Journal started publishing these stories. How vocal has he been internally? How involved is he in the response and dealing with the reaction that Facebook is getting in Washington?
Mark is involved in conversations about safety at our company every day. In my work, I work regularly with Mark, and I think publicly we've seen him not only with his many congressional testimonies, but we've also seen public statements from Mark, including his very early call for regulation, which was now about 2.5 years ago, with him saying we shouldn't be making all these decisions on our own. We want government regulation. We think government should have a say. That continues to be the case.